Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing a quick video on some of the things we do at matches. If you want to try and jump up some positions, if you find yourself kind of stagnated a little bit, I guess, you don't really feel like you're improving much, there's always some things you can do. Whether it helps you, I don't know. I can only tell you some of the stuff that I do and some of the stuff I see other people do, and maybe that'll help you. Maybe it won't, but you won't know until you practice. At stages or even practice in the field before a match. But so some of the things we do, and I know what I do, is when I'm watching somebody shoot a stage, if I'm not the first person, which I hate being the first person on the stage because it always seems like those are the ones that I end up bombing, especially right out the gate. But if I'm not the first person, what I'm doing is I'm watching the person shooting. And when that person's shooting, like, I'm paying attention to the stage. Is he getting out of his comfort zone to shoot this? Is he having to kick his leg a certain direction? Is he having to reach around this to be able to try and stabilize his gun a little better? Because a lot of props, are going to be pretty cut and dry. You're going to be able to drop your gun on your bag, and you're going to be able to shoot it pretty comfortably. Whether you got your legs wide, whether you're standing up tall, whether you're knelt down. It's gonna be pretty cut and dry. But you start getting on, maybe a tank trap, and depending on how they have it positioned, especially if you're left-handed, and I'm gonna throw left-handed shooters out there because they do seem like they get the bad end of the shaft every now and again on props, because they're usually set up by right-handed guys. There's not a lot of left-handed shooters, and that's just kind of the way it is. And it kind of sucks for them, I'll say it. But like for a right-handed shooter, if we're shooting weak side, you got to go up, you got to shoot off your left shoulder. I suck at it, I'll be honest with you. But the target sizes are usually bigger, so it usually, usually accommodates, for people not being able to shoot them very well, and still be able to be accurate. But when I'm watching these people, I'm trying to pay attention to how they're shooting it, whether they're comfortable, whether they're not comfortable, whether the prop moves. And while I'm doing that, I'm trying to make sure that if I go up there and I start this stage and I have a problem with it, I'm not trying to figure out how I can change how I'm shooting on the clock. I know that when I'm sitting back there and I'm watching, them move their arm around here, or them, trying to get all squirmed up, then now, maybe when I get up there, if I have a problem the way I'm going to do it, I can try it this way, or I can try and bend down a little more. I can try and, I can try and switch arms if I have to, but I have all that planned inside my head in case something goes wrong and I'm not burning the clock down. Now, the other thing, another thing a lot of people do is they run timers. Shot timers are great, especially if you put one in your earpiece, or you have a watch where you can see it. I know if it's a 2-minute stage and I got a minute left and it's a 10-round stage and I'm down to 5 rounds, I know that I'm still cruising pretty good. I know if I struggle in the first minute because of, wind problem, I'm trying to wait till the wind dies down, or, I get out of position, or I kind of, just something happens, and now I got 8 shots left. I know I got to speed it up in the last minute, but with a shot timer, you don't have to worry about trying to beat the clock. It's so easy to lose track of time when you're shooting, and you start these stages. Even though a 2-minute stage is a ton of time, when you start it, like you just shoot fast. And really, there's no reason to shoot fast unless you just want to, because the only thing you're doing is just hindering your ability to pay attention to your weather conditions or your surroundings while you're shooting. And a lot of the people who are shooting really good, they're running timers and they're taking their time. If something happens, they know they can speed up. They're not trying to beat the clock. They're worried about points over time. And it's real easy to do a stage and not worry about the time, or not run a timer, and then you try and race through it, and you drop 2. If you would have had a timer, even if something happened at the very end, if you got 9 shots off good, like, you only dropped 1. or if you took your sweet time, like I did at a KYL once. Like I knew I had 45 seconds left and the wind gusted up and I had 1/4 inch targets left. So I just sat my gun down and I waited until the wind dropped and then I shot and I was accurate. I didn't have to worry about, the wind blowing me off. Watching when you start paying attention to wind, like you need to pay attention to what it's doing while you're shooting. If it's the middle of the day, you need to pay attention. You need to kind of remember, what it's been doing the rest of the day already. What the gusts have been, how long the gusts have been going, what direction the gusts are coming from, because every direction can impact your bullet. If it's coming a headwind, if it's coming tailwind, left or right, like all that's going to change your elevation and possibly your spin off. So those are some of the other things, that you really got to pay attention to, because when you're factoring that in, like if you go up to shoot the stage and the gusts are down and then the gusts come back, it's a whole lot easier to try and remember, what direction and what they were doing already, because it's probably going to be pretty similar. Not too often throughout the day does it change, like that. Like it's usually one direction, then it starts shifting a little ways, but you do have ranges where it's literally just seems like it's left or right because it's swirling. And those are just hard to shoot at. You shoot them and one person's shooting it one way, blowing off the left, and then you go up and shoot it and you're blowing off the right. So those are the times when you need to be on glass watching other people shooting. You need to be watching where their bullets are impacting, on a target. If you can see, the little lead splatter moving a certain direction, if they're hitting in the background, you can see little blades of grass or twigs or dust, blowing up. You can watch your mirages. You can try and figure out which way the weeds are going. That can be a little tricky because when they're blowing one direction, once that wind lets up, like they like to, do some weird stuff. So it can be really hard to pinpoint what direction wind's going on tall weed, just because they like to flop around. They don't really. It's not like a ribbon or something. It's going to just go straight with the wind. A lot of us are, trying to find some kind of wind flag in the background, or we're really paying attention to the wind flag where we're at, on our tripods we have mounted. We're adjusting our kestrel throughout the day for changing weather conditions. That will make a big difference. The other thing is trying not to be distracted by other people shooting. When somebody gets up there and they're shooting, and this bites a lot of people, and it's bit me, I couldn't even tell you how many times. When somebody's shooting and they get done shooting, they come off the line, they grab their gun, and they're like, man, I couldn't find it. I was blown off the left side. And, the wind's blowing a little bit. So you go up there and you go shoot and the wind's still blowing and you're expecting the exact same conditions. So you start shooting and you're blowing off the right side. Now, the reason this is important is because everybody is going to zero their gun different. Every single person. They're going to have a different trigger pull than you. They're going to put their face in a different position behind their gun than you are. Their gun's going to be set up different. You don't know what their spin off is going to be on their gun. You don't know what their ammo is doing out of their gun. So this is a very big key, and that's because you just don't know how their gun is shooting compared to yours. So when you're sitting at the zero board and you're zeroing, you might be, slightly off the right, and you just, can't fine tune it to smack dead center, you're between a tenth. They go up and they're a tenth off to the left, but they're still hitting zero, and that's just because their trigger pull is different, or because their parallax, wasn't corrected at different or at that distance. So when you go up to shoot, you've been listening to people talk ahead of you, and you got this in your mindset, that the wind is going a certain thing, so you adjust what you were going to do on that stage, and it bites you. Like if they're blowing off the left, you adjust a little bit extra wind before you get up there, and it should have been a center hold for you. So you just lost 2 points. May cost you first place, may cost second place, may drop you mid pack. You just don't know. But it's always okay, to take what people take the surroundings in. Like listen to what people are saying. Um, because that's going to allow you to try and gather as much information. That's essentially what we're doing. We're gathering information, but you need to figure out, when to use it. Like, should I apply it? And those are all the things that, watching the stuff in the background is going to help you. As you do this, you're going to be able to tell, pretty much what the wind's doing. Like, you'll be able to get a pretty good guess. So if somebody says they're blowing off like if they're shooting a 1 mil wide plate, at 100 yards, and they're blowing off the side, you should be able to tell by the graph that's a pretty hefty wind. So you should be able to tell, whether or not, it could have been their trigger pull, it could have been, when they were sending their round down, or whether it was actually the wind. So you need to be able to decipher that kind of stuff. And then consistency is the other thing. You need to make sure that you're load tested. Air guns, you need to make sure your regulators are set. You need to make sure you've load tested your ammo and it's happy for your gun. You need to make sure your group sizes are good. You need to make sure you put time behind that rifle, and you know when to pull that trigger. You know when to. You need to know where your balance point is on that gun. You know how best to hold it, because some guns are sensitive. As far as how you hold it, hold sensitive. Sorry. If you're a rimfire, you need to make sure that you're got a nice torque set. You need to make sure that you're torquing stuff down right, and torquing goes down the same thing with air guns. But air guns, you better start. You need to make sure that you are Loctiting your screws together, because they will fall out. They will screw you out of match when your little pieces fall out, or it starts making some weird noise and it sounds like something about to vibrate apart. That's the kind of stuff that'll bite you. These little pieces of O-rings, like you might have, like you need to make sure your O-rings are lubricated. You need to make sure everything's fine-tuned. As you start seeing your groups open up, you're going to know whether your gun's fouling up. You'll know if your O-rings are drying out. You'll know, shooting an air gun, you're going to be able to hear it, because it's going to tell you what's going on. It's going to allow you to know whether you have a problem coming up ahead of time or not. Rimfires, not so much. But you'll have to load test. I mean, we got tons of ammo. These two, we got different lot numbers, and lot numbers are on the backs of them. So you load test your gun. For a type of ammo, you might send it out to the Lapua testing center, where they're going to load test a whole bunch of ammo. They're going to find the best group for your gun. And, going down to torque, we were talking about earlier, they're going to test your gun out of the stock. So they're going to put it in a vise, and they're going to shoot it, and they're going to get the best group with that ammo, and then they're going to let you know what it is. You'll buy it and move on. But when you get your action back, and you're putting your gun together, I was sitting there looking for mine, trying to figure where it's at, but your little torque set is going to change your group. Depending on what your torque specs is for that stock, it's going to absolutely affect your group size. And you can have the best ammo in the world, but if you ain't keeping track of your torque settings, or you ain't testing at different torque settings, it's just like you're never going to get the best you can get out of that gun. And another thing is that if you're struggling, and you're not sure, and you feel like you're doing everything right, like you're not shooting stuff out of sequence, like you're not getting out of your comfort zone very much, and it's costing you points, and you're doing everything right, it might just be time to switch guns. And that's normal. That's okay. You're going to have guns that fit you good. You shoot them really well, but you're just not able to hold it still long enough, or get your shot off, or it's just not as comfortable as a different one. I mean, I know that I had a rimfire stock not too long ago. I love the stock. Like, it looked great, felt great, but I was struggling to hold it still. I was struggling to kind of keep it like my air gun, my my Panthera, I can set that down and it just sits there. Like I've got it perfectly balanced, I've got it perfectly weighted. Like it's basically like a Tesla. Like that thing self-drives. But this TCS I had, I just could not hold this gun still. And I mean, it was beautiful stock. Now they have one for rimfire, which is weighted completely different. So I have no doubt that they took care of that, because it was a centerfire stock, and centerfires, they have long barrels, heavy barrels, and just not something that I had on my Voodoo. But that's just some of the things we do. I know I probably missed a whole lot of stuff, trying to wing it as I go, but I get sidetracked pretty easy. And if you're struggling and you have a bad stage, don't let it eat at you. If you let a stage eat at you, it's just going to cost you more points. I know that the competition is way higher than what it used to be. When I first started, like the competition wasn't as good as it was now. Like I'm not saying nobody was bad. Don't get me wrong. But there was definitely a lot of people that have really advanced in how they shoot. But the sport was pretty new back then. There wasn't a lot of people that did it. But the level of competition is very high. I mean, there's some extremely good shooters, and there's a whole hell of a lot of them out there. But when I'm walking down the line, I ask people how they're doing, because I've had bad days, and sometimes when somebody asks me how I'm doing, like I just start talking, I get out of that mindset, and like it changes how I'm shooting. When I ask, I walk down, I'm asking friends like, man, how you shooting today? And they're like, I'm good. I'm like, it's awesome. Or else they're like, man, I'm kind of struggling. I'm like, man, like I try and, just with them. And I'm like, the wind's tricky, the prop's tricky. I just try and, I try and get them to forget, how they're shooting, that way they can better their day, and they're not just trying to eat at it. But anyways, that's all I got. Hope you find it helpful. If you did, if you got some suggestions, man, feel free to pop them in the comments. But anyways, hope you guys find some helpfulness out of this, and we'll see you at the next one.